O'clock hour. We're joined by Jake Butt, Big Ten Network, former Michigan Star tight end, with us on 365 Sports. So if I asked you right top of my head, could you name all 18 of the Big Ten teams? Could you do it pretty quickly?
I don't. Yeah, quickly. If I couldn't do that, then I probably should be fired. But I do think I can do that.
How much is too much? How many teams is too many teams in your opinion?
At this point, it all blends together, anyways. You know, we're all under one umbrella of college football. So I don't mind it as long as it's adding to the conference and as long as it's going to create better matchups. I think they've done a great job. You know, the concern would probably be travel, but the conference did a phenomenal job of, organizing the schedule in the best way possible. And I guess, if you added more teams, maybe you could get even more flexibility within the conference. So, look, there's been so much change already. I would be shocked if we didn't see a significant amount of more change even in the future.
Jake, one of the stories coming out of Media Days today, and look, I understand that you are a Michigan man, and you have a different perspective on this, having played in those massive stadiums, those massive games. But there's teams playing on Friday nights, and there's a few teams that are not playing on Friday nights. How long do you think that lasts, or do you think that eventually they will make it maybe more equitable, because it seems like a little bit of an advantage for those three teams that don't have to worry about that?
Well, I mean, sure, for sure. But honestly, there's other factors that play here, and you can make the argument that there's advantages to playing on Friday night. Because of the competitive nature and all the big games we're going to have, some of these teams that might have been the fifth, sixth, seventh game in terms of priority on a given Saturday are now in their own slot where the whole country is going to get the chance to watch. Of course, that benefits from an exposure standpoint, from a recruitment standpoint. It's one more day. It's not nothing, but these guys are in college. At least I can speak for myself. I don't think it would have affected me drastically. At the end of the day, winning football is winning football. I played Friday Night Lights in high school in Ohio. I loved it. I love night games. So I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's going to make a measurable difference, though.
Jake, what are you expecting from your Michigan Wolverines in this follow-up campaign? I mean, obviously, the national titles last year, it's a brand-new team, but obviously a lot of questions and turnover. What are your expectations?
Yeah. Well, my expectations is that it's going to be one of the best defenses in college football. And the question is how deep they are. That the depth was a big reason they were able to stay clean, 15-0, and win the national championship last year. But on the defensive side of the ball, that's one of the best units in college football. They will need depth sooner because they play Texas. The schedule's much more challenging this year. All of us are going to be watching week one when they play Fresno State. And all of us are going to be watching the quarterback position. First off, who is it? And second off, how do they look? And with that, what are there wrinkles in the offensive system? If it's Alex Orji, we saw packages built for him as a runner. I'd imagine with Sharon Moore being, an offensive line coach and understanding the way this roster is built, still going to want to be a heavy run-first team. So maybe they use Orji and packages regardless. But again, with the defense being as good as they are, maybe that leads them towards going with a Jack Tuttle or a Davis Warren, someone that has a more limited upside than Alex Orji, but is probably safer with the football. And they just say, listen, our defense is going to keep us in every game. Let's get a guy that hits the check down, kind of like a Cade McNamara situation. Cade McNamara took Michigan to the playoffs in 2021. So I still think this roster is good enough to win now. I think it probably helps them having come off a national title run that a lot of people are counting them out. I mean, Penn State was voted ahead of them there in that poll. So they, Michigan's handled business against them these past few years. So look, it's going to be impossible to predict this conference, but Michigan is certainly in that conversation as one of the best teams.
Michigan has always played a great schedule. They have Texas in that game you mentioned. You don't want to overlook the opener with Fresno, but they do have UT. What was it like when you were there, when you had those monstrous-type non-conference games ahead of joining the games inside the Big Ten when you played in front of those massive stadiums?
There was only one instance, and it was versus Utah in 2015. It was Harbaugh's first game. It was our first game of the year, and we went on the road. And, the biggest thing you get out of those games is I think everybody goes into the offseason thinking they have a shot. Even when I was in the NFL, it's like, man, we have a playoff roster. We can do this. Everyone looks good in the offseason practicing against one another in perfect conditions. Those big games are truth-telling games, That's when things get revealed. So, we'll learn a lot about Michigan there early in the season. And honestly, I think they're going to be extremely competitive. Again, that defense, we saw what they did last year to Washington, to a bunch of their opponents. That defensive line that Michigan has, where you think of Derek Moore, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart. That's the same 4 guys that were on the field for the 4th down stop against Alabama. So I know they love Jayshon Barham, their linebacker. They think he's a first-round pick. They got Ernest Hausman, who they love. I mean, this Will Johnson's the best corner in college football, guys. I'm just saying. And I'm not saying this as a Michigan guy. I'm saying this just being objective. This is still a really, really good team. Probably not as good as last year, but a team that can win.
Jake, what do you think will be the biggest, things that Oregon, Washington, and UCLA and USC have to get used to as far as playing Big Ten football? I know that they're very good, but it feels like there's going to be some adjustment. What do you think those adjustments might be?
I don't think I subscribe to that camp the way others do.
Okay.
Washington won the Joe Moore Award last year, so they had the best offensive line in college football. Oregon runs the hell out of the ball. UCLA has had a dominant rushing attack these past few years. So, I think Dan Lanning said it in a press conference not too long ago that, hey, at the end of the day, winning football is winning football. And that's what I subscribe to. You can look even across the conference. Wisconsin made it to the Big Ten championship playing 22 and 23 personnel. Then you can look at Ohio State, where it was more up-tempo shotgun. Even within our conference, there's a wide range of philosophies. So, to me, I think it's more about winning football being winning football than any of those 4 teams having to really adjust to the Big Ten.
Other than the Alphas, Blue Bloods that are a part of the Big Ten, including the some of the incoming teams, can you give us a dark horse that may not play for the Big Ten championship, but 1 or 2 teams that might come from the middle of the pack?
Man, I'll tell you what, I'm really, really liking Rutgers. And, I think I look at that team. That team's become a punching bag for whatever reason, because Shiano's a damn good coach. They're a physical football team. They were in those games last year against Ohio State and Michigan, and I know the final score won't show it, but those were close games into the second half, very physical games. They return nearly everyone. The defense returns nearly everyone. Offensively, somehow Kyle Monungai led the Big Ten in rushing last year, guys, and he's the most underrated running back in the Big Ten. We talk about Ohio State's backs, Michigan's backs, Wisconsin, Penn State. Monungai led the Big Ten in rushing, and that was with some of the worst quarterback play in all of college football, so defenses could load the box. Shiano has his identity in place, and then you look at their schedule. That they benefit more than any other team from doing away with the East and the West. No longer does Rutgers have to play Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. So you can see how this is coming together. They have a favorable schedule with a loaded roster that returns all their talent. They upgraded at the quarterback position, even though Callie McManus is no Caleb Williams. The stars are aligning where Rutgers is going to be a dangerous team that can make a run this year.
Jake, what was the hardest place to play during your career?
Penn State.
Okay.
Zero hesitation.
I asked
Penn
you that
State.
because we saw the list that were coming out in advance of the game, and we saw Penn State high, and you see like the whiteout and stuff, but not having experienced it, can you explain why Penn State is just such a big deal?
Well, first off, if you're ever getting out there, it's in the middle of nowhere. So wherever you're driving, you're just driving through trees, and you're like, where am I going? And then bang, like this pocket in the middle of Pennsylvania is this town. And I say that because there's not much else to do on a Saturday. But if there's a big Penn State game, you better believe everyone within driving distance is going to go to that game. They also have an RV parking lot, and anyone that travels in an RV, they're ready to get after it. You get to the stadium, it's a night game, it's a whiteout. Michigan is a higher capacity stadium, but it's not very intimidating because it's built out. There's not a bad seat in the house in the big house. Penn State is vertical. It looks like the fans are falling on top of you. Deafening noise in the stadium. And, that they get that Nittany Lion roar. It's like they're wow, and then the fan gets – I love that stadium. It's my favorite place to play And I loved road games as a player. It was my favorite place to play at any level.
Ohio State has the huge burden of being the overwhelming favorite in this league. And Ryan Day, he's in such a weird spot when it comes to, I would say, a pocket of their fan base. Maybe not all, but because beating Michigan is such a huge thing, and he has not done that yet, there is this, pall over his tenure like he's not one of the best coaches in the country. 3 losses to Michigan is, I think, equal to all the other losses he has as a head coach there. Do you think that the 12-team playoff will alleviate that pressure, knowing that should they only lose to Michigan and then still be in the playoff and still be the conference champ, that people can let that go? Or is that game so ingrained in the culture of both schools that that will affect him?
Man, it's a great question. And I'll say this. I don't think losing to Michigan and just making it to the playoffs will be good enough for Ohio State fans. I think you'd have to, if they won a national championship and lost to Michigan, I think Buckeye fans would still take that. But I look at this and I say, this is such a big year for Ryan Day. I don't think there's a single coach in all of sports under more pressure than he is, because you look at the resources that have been committed to his vision in Columbus. That's one of the best rosters, if not the best roster. I know a lot of people subscribe to the fact that Ohio State has the best roster in college football. They are absolutely loaded at every single position. They go out and get Chip Kelly. The head coach of UCLA decides he wants to call plays for Ryan Day. I mean, that's nuts. And it's one of the best offensive minds in college football. So there's rumors of the NIL spend being upwards of $20, $25 million. I say that to say this. That's all good and well, but you can't tell me that the reason they lost to Michigan in 2023, 22, or 21 was because of a lack of talent or because of play calling. In order for them to get over the hump, it's going to have to come from something beyond just talent. They've recruited as well as anybody for the past 5 years anyways. Talent is not the issue, and it's always good to add more talent, but something has to change. And I was listening to Will Howard, their projected starting quarterback, transferred in from Kansas State. I thought he had a really great answer that if I was Ohio State fans, I'd appreciate it. You remember last year, Kyle McCord said, they asked, hey, what if you lose to Ohio State? And he said, listen, win or lose, it's just a game. And guys, it's not just a game. No one wants to hear that. I would never say that as a player. Will Howard was asked the same question, and he said to the media, his response was, we get it. We're proud that we are considered talented, but everyone in the locker room, and he's speaking for the locker room, says they're tired of hearing about the talent. They want to be known for their toughness, for their grit, for their physicality. And I said, you know what? If I was a Buckeye fan, that'd be the exact answer I wanted to hear and be very encouraging for the outlook of their season.
Great segment, Jake. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it, what you do with the Big Ten Network and also college athletics, college football. Thanks for your time. Have a great rest of the week.
Yes, sir. Anytime. Take care.
Jake, but what a great segment. I just saw where Beaver Stadium is getting